I guess I'll start with an introduction. I'm here with Tony, Tony Johnson. So, where did you, if we just jump into your life story, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Chicago, Illinois, in the inner cities,
Mm-hmm.
West Inglewood.
Okay.
hmm
And you grew up all through high school there, or
Yeah, I attended high school on the east side of town, but I lived on the south side of town because of the crime and the violence that was in my own community, my neighborhood. So my mom and grandmother wanted me to get a good education, so I would take a bus, a hour long bus to the east
mm-hmm.
side of town to go to school, high school.
So you mentioned your mom and your grandma. Was that who mainly raised you, or is there others in the house as well?
Well, I would say my mom and grandmother. Um, we stayed with our grandmother until my mother was able to get a place of her own. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
oldest of five.
Yep.
So, um, just to go back a little bit, doing the migration of African Americans coming to leaving the South.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother was raised and lived in the Delta area of Mississippi.
Okay.
And during my mother's senior year in high school, I was conceived
Mm-hmm.
by my dad, who's also deceased right now, as well as my mother.
Okay.
Yeah, so when she came to Chicago, my grandmother, she left my mom with her mother, my great grandmother, until she found a place to live and a job to support her and my mother, which is her daughter, who was young at the time, about 17. So I was conceived at 17. My mother was
Okay.
birthed me at 17 years old.
And was your father in the picture at all?
No, my father during that time, uh, they were separated. They loved each other, but because her mom, my grandmother, sent for her on a train to move to Chicago, that separated them. And who knows what would have happened? They probably would have married,
Mm,
but it didn't happen. He went further south to New Orleans.
I see. And then so she moves to Chicago, and very shortly afterwards, you're born.
I was born in Chicago, Illinois in 1957.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as you're raised in Chicago, were you raised going to church?
Yeah, yeah. My grandmother, uh, dad, was a minister, and he had six boys, six girls. Five of the boys were ministers, and my grandmother was a minister.
Okay.
So shortly after my grandmother settled down in Chicago with my mom, this is kind of strange. My my grandmother and her brother shared a house together. So
Mm-hmm.
we had many people in the house, but the house was a church, a storefront church in the front of it.
Hmm.
So we all lived in there, and the church was in the front. They called it storefront churches in
Yep.
Chicago. So uh, until my grandmother was able to move out, my grandmother was participated in the church services that my uncle pastored.
I see.
Yeah, if that makes sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, she we grew up in uh, a spiritual environment. Yeah, with a lot of pastors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did that put a lot of pressure in you in your personal walk with the Lord? How did that growing up in a church environment, like or literally growing up in a church,
Yeah.
affect your personal walk with God?
Well, it wasn't until years later um, my grandmother was able to get her own location, and I was just part of the church. I served in the church at a young age as a kid by singing and playing guitar. I started playing guitar at 5 years old.
Mm.
So it was a church that was really had a lot of excitement.
Yep.
But my grandmother taught me to memorize scripture. So John 1 was the scripture she asked me to memorize, and I would stand up in front of the church, in front of everybody, and say it, because I had memorized it, and
Yeah.
everybody thought that was pretty cool,
Mm-hmm.
that I could remember John, the first chapter of John, which is, is a something that stayed with me all my life, uh, and just really to get to know who God is, who Jesus is, and who the Holy Spirit is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember where the scripture is, but somewhere it says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it." So.
And I believe she knew that. My
Mm-hmm.
grandmother knew that because as a child, later on in life, um, there was a lot of trauma, childhood drama, and because my mom, she moved out of my grandmother's house and
Mm-hmm.
she had her own place, and then she met a man who would have obviously been my stepfather,
Yep.
who appeared to be a really nice guy, but eventually he basically would just provide a lot of abuse to my mom.
Mm-hmm.
He abused her quite a bit, verbally and physically. And I'm the oldest, so I tried to defend my mom. So I was getting a lot of physical abuse. I never heard anything positive come out of his mouth towards me. It was all negative and put me down all the time. And it was just a lot of abuse that I experienced from my stepfather.
Yeah.
So, through all that, my grandmother was still there for us. So, after a long period of time, and I can't tell you how many years, our grandmother, um, we used to cry to go to our grandmother's house just to find some peace and safety. Me and my sister, she was
Mm-hmm.
like a year younger, who's deceased now. So, and this was in Chicago. So, it was a lot. It was a poverty-stricken community.
Yep.
So it was like a challenge. Very,
Mm-hmm.
it was very challenging growing up as a child. And during that time, there was a lot of racial discrimination and things like that. And as a young kid, having a gun put to your head because of your color or your skin, you know, being falsely accused of things that
Yep.
you've never done. So it causes a lot of, you can imagine what things like
Mm-hmm.
that would cause abuse when in your home and then wherever you went. So those was the times that I grew up in.
That, and you were born in '57, so that would have been in the middle of the '60s and the '70s. You're
Yes.
coming up,
Hmm.
and so at some point, it says you're in Peoria now, and we're right here recording just south of Peoria little ways. Uh, what brought you to that area, and what path did you follow at once you came to adulthood?
Well, it was I had family that lived in Peoria.
Okay.
My grandmother's sister lived in Peoria, and my mother's cousins lived in Peoria. So Peoria was a smaller town, and it wasn't as um, challenging a place to live like Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago was very hard to live in at that time. Excuse me. So I would ask my aunt if I can come visit her, and whenever she visited us in Chicago, I would almost cry to get away just to come somewhere where it's peaceful and enjoy the ride and see the corn in the fields and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So I would come to Peoria, and it was a different lifestyle. Um, and I did that over the years, and then some things in my life led to me making a lot of bad decisions in
Yep.
life as a young man. in my early teens. So I made a lot of bad choices, made a lot of bad decisions because you didn't know how to make a good decision,
Mm-hmm.
and I followed the wrong crowd. I did all those things. I sought love from the wrong people. Really didn't know what love was, and so things got pretty hard for me. I experienced homelessness. As you move up a little bit in my lifetime, um, and my mom, she really couldn't afford to take care of us because she had a lot of mental damage from the beatings.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was I I had made a bad decision and I wanted to try to get out of Chicago, and my aunt was just happened to be visiting. I said, could I ride back with her to Peoria? So Peoria was a safe place for me at that time.
Yep.
So I get back to Peoria, and I felt like because of who I was in Chicago, I had an advantage here,
Mm-hmm.
to do things that, you know, I shouldn't have done. Uh, I mean, I guess people can interpret it their own way because I'm not going to say what it was,
Yeah.
but it wasn't um, nothing where I had to be incarcerated
Mm-hmm.
for a long period of time or something like that. But it was a lot of bad decisions, and you could imagine growing up in an environment like I did, and the community where I lived in Chicago. I mean, it was just it's hard to describe that now.
Mm-hmm.
But so when I came to Peoria, I remember I was about 17, and my aunt had a friend who was an Army recruiter, and she wanted to try to help me, and she introduced me to the guy, and this was right during Vietnam, in the Vietnam area, and he encouraged me. I was an athlete too. He encouraged me to join the military, join the Army.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so not long after that, I came back to Chicago, excited about possibly going into the Army, but my mother would not sign the papers for me at 17. She had a fear of me being, you know, losing my life over there.
Yep.
And so I signed a delayed entry where once I turn 18, I can leave on
Mm-hmm.
my own. So that's what I did.
Yep.
And I went into the Army, and around the end of Vietnam, during the red alert time where you had to always be on call to replace someone.
Yeah.
So I was in an infantry cavalry unit. I enjoyed the training, I enjoyed the challenges. But one problem I had was following orders,
Yep.
you know. And but eventually they break you down to where you would say yes, sir,
Mm-hmm.
to someone who was in charge of you. So I decided to play the game and do that. And I found out that it was a different thing for me, but it caused me to get promoted and move on in life. And I was a very good soldier. I was stationed in Hawaii for 2.5 years on the island of Oahu,
Mm-hmm.
um, Schofield Barracks, and did a lot of training, like ranger training and things like that. So I would go all the way out in the military stuff. At the same time, I was, self medicating, trying to escape
Mm-hmm.
reality of life even during that time.
Yep.
So that's what we do sometime when we go through a lot of difficulties in life. We feel like there's no hope in life. And then we try to self medicate, and then we get addicted. And then it just we further go down a downward spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually that leads to physical death, you know.
Yeah.
But that's not God's plan for us. So I always saw the God's plan, but I've also realized that someone was praying for me, and I really believe it was family. It was my grandmother, and And I don't know who else it was, but I just sensed that there was some type of covering on my life because I had so many incidents where I almost lost my life. Um, I've had friends that would accidentally get shot with a 50 cal,
Yep.
which is a big hole in them, and they lived through that. But I was right there doing that incident. I fell over a ravine and hit the bottom of the ravine, and felt electricity go through my body, and didn't think I would be able to walk again.
Yep.
So now I'm walking, and I mean, I do have some damage, but I'm still here. So during that time, that I felt like that was a turning point in my life where I was going in a different direction, and I think it might have been towards the path that God wanted me to be on. You're talking about paths.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished that service. I had a major decision to make because I was a good soldier. They wanted me to reenlist and stay in Hawaii for another 10 years, which was attractive. It had a nice bonus. And I decided not to and came home. So I came back home to almost the same thing that was happening before I left. And it was hard to deal with. So I got caught up in things again and started self medicating, trying to escape the reality of what I was actually going through. And then my grandmother, she was on the deathbed. And so that was really something that hit me pretty hard. She always wanted me to be a really good person and make great decisions, all the things that, I should have been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And she loved me even doing all those bad decisions and everything. So I remember that I was notified, and I I went and saw her, and they said she was not conscious for about a few days. And I get there, and she turns over and told me she was waiting for me to get there. So she actually was waiting for me to leave the earth until I, I came, and I held her hand, and she encouraged me and said some things that really helped me, and it just stayed with me.
Yeah.
And then I started, you know, it wasn't nothing that happened overnight, but I wanted to do something different in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I played basketball at a college there in Chicago called Olive Harvey after she passed, and transferred to ICC, played there, and I was a stutter. I was a stutterer. I stuttered really bad.
Oh.
Yeah, I stuttered a lot, and because I had to have a major at ICC, I just chose theater, which was the wrong thing as a stutterer to do. So it helped me because I mean I was afraid to in speech class I was afraid to talk. Um, so my instructor met with me one on one and helped me get through my stuttering challenge, and I was able to uh, write skits. I won a award for a skit I wrote, and I
Oh,
did
really?
and do monologues as well.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, so it was a big. I was starting to accomplish things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know I was a good athlete and I could slam on anybody, but other than that, I wanted. I think that was more of accomplishment to me than anything to do a monologue down at Gar Hall downtown Peoria, where the big cannon is in front of the building.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I did my.
So you're able to go from being a stutterer to having the confidence to actually being able to have a monologue.
Have a monologue, do a monologue.
Do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got a standing ovation. So I never really felt anything like that before. So I wanted to pursue, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to
Yep.
pursue that. But every time I would go in a direction, it was almost like I would hit a brick wall, like come up against something where I couldn't go any further. All the time when God wanted me to serve Him.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to a little church after I got older and got married to my wife Dorothy, we've been married for over 40 years. Uh, we had I adopted a son that she birthed before we married, and I raised him, gave him my last name. We had two kids together, Shamir and Tony, and um, then we adopted two girls. So God just blessed us. He blessed us so many times over the years. And we was going to a church around the corner from of the house there, and they asked me would I be the assistant pastor. So I pastored for like 13 years.
Okay.
Yeah, but before that, I was doing like community ministry. And one of the things that I decided to do in my community, which um, really needed it, it needed I needed to reach out to young men,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and we would meet there, and I would sit in a circle. And I think that was the first time I really not do any counseling. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just meeting with them, and we would pray and talk about our lives and try to improve our lives, and that was really successful. So later on in life, I had little jobs here, jobs there, and I decided to go to school, back to school, and I got my bachelor's degree in community ministry over at Lincoln University.
Okay. Now that university isn't
It's,
around anymore. I
it
think, if I
doesn't
remember it.
exist. They closed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the course that we took was called Urban Ministry,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a new program, and it was like eight of us in this class. So I graduated with a bachelor's degree in urban ministry, and then they changed the name of that program to Christian Ministries. So, and then later on in life, after you know serving in the church about 13 years, I decided to go back and get a master's degree in psychology and counseling,
Mm-hmm.
concentration pastoral care.
Yep. And so that's where you got to be a counselor, like as legally as you can get, I guess.
Yeah, that's where I'm serving at now. I didn't have to be licensed, but even before that, I was a on-call chaplain.
Mm-hmm.
You really didn't need to have the degree; you just needed to either serve in a church as a pastor, and basically that was it to be on-call chaplain at Methodist. So I did that for about 6 years, and it taught me a lot. I got a lot of training on being a chaplain, which I love being a chaplain because, I mean, you work with all people.
Mm-hmm.
There's no different. Imago Dei, everybody's made in God's image.
Yep.
So I love that, and just to provide that spiritual care.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I'm curious about, because you've mentioned it before in other times that we've been together, is you've gone to a number of different churches, such as like the Jehovah's Witness and stuff. If I remember that correctly, is that right? Or,
Well, I was actually being recruited by a lot of different religions, I guess you can call it. Jehovah Witness, the Moonies, Sun Young Moon's
mm-hmm.
organization, Seventh Day Adventists, um, and you know, I was seeking an experience with God, a relationship. I just didn't feel comfortable doing any of that, and not to have anything against the people,
Yes.
the denomination. Actually, I was baptized in a Pentecostal church here
Mm-hmm.
in Peoria, and which I wouldn't say I was a Pentecostal. I would just say that I'm a disciple of Christ. Um, but as far as relationships, I have relationship with everyone, sort of like ecumenical. I've been part of different organizations that groups where we got together. We did a 40 days of prayer, uh, event here in Peoria. About it's been a while ago, like 2007. It's
Mhm.
actually on YouTube. 40 Days of Prayer Peoria, and it was very successful. And we included everyone. We included the Baptist Church, the Catholic Church, the Pentecostal Church, whatever church you were, and we came together for 40 nights and prayed together and worshiped together,
Mhm.
and it was pretty awesome. And each night, a different organization led the service.
I see.
Yeah, so I mean, it was so wonderful where the crime rate dropped 16% in our city.
Oh wow.
Yeah, in Washington, this side of the river, Peoria
Yep.
River, was involved. Uh, so it was one of the greatest events that I've ever been part of. Our mayor, Artist, was mayor at the time, and he basically asked the faith-based community to come together, and he shared this idea with the faith-based community,
Mhm.
and we did it.
Yep.
Now that's a hard thing to do, to get everybody together like that.
Yeah. So what have you learned in interacting and talking to people from all the different churches? Cuz you go down the street in some places and you see two different churches sitting right next to each other, and there's some differences between them, but we all serve the same God. So what'd you learn? What'd you take away from interacting with that many different types of Christians, but knowing that we're being one?
Well, I think a lot of it is traditional. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the way what you grew up in. You know, and but I think what's more important about having a relationship with God, when you do that, when you really get to have that relationship and really get to know the one who gave his son a sacrifice for all of us, the one who loved the world so much that he gave his son, the one who doesn't, you know, discriminate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that uh, get in the way of unity and what in peace in our communities as well as around the world. Um, we're so, you know, I'm not trying to be judgmental here, but we are judgmental towards people who God loves.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that statement is going to, you know, offend anyone, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, but to really get to know God's love will change us all in the way we think, in the way we feel about others.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just feel that because I've experienced it and I do that. I mean, I've tried to live that. Um, I mean, what I do now, working with so many different people in the profession I'm doing now at Pace, I've worked with a participant all the way from uh, Yugoslavia, I believe, is where this war is over there in the Middle East,
Uh.
Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ukraine. Yeah.
Ukraine. Yeah, he was able to get out of there. I've worked with him and tried to interpret and talk to him, and one thing I knew that when we prayed together, he felt the same God. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we was one with him, and then uh, you know, right now something that's really in my heart is someone who's in a real bad situation, and to allow God to be able to use me. You know, it's I don't even know if I should say this, but it's the way God uses us so that there's a colorblind. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're colorblind to what people look like, and we know that everybody belongs to Him.
Yes.
So,
Mm-hmm.
does that make sense?
Yeah,
As far
yeah.
as answering your question?
Cause yeah, that's true. And there's so many different ways to be judgmental towards somebody. I
Yeah,
mean, it could be even just the type of shirt somebody's wearing. But
I agree.
yeah, knowing that we are all created by the same God makes a whole lot of difference in how we get along with others.
That's a good statement right there, and I wish I could have said that. Um,
So there's something else I wanted to ask you about as well as praying by the river. Is that something I haven't experienced, but I know it's something you've been a part of and others have been a part of.
yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I've had so many experiences where God has decided to give me an assignment to do, and I was able to hear what He said and just stepped out and did it. During COVID, I was not expecting this. I used to go drive out to the river by the marina here in Peoria behind the steel mill
Mm-hmm.
and just pray every Sunday morning. And as I was over there praying, I really felt in my heart that even during this pandemic, that there was something that I needed to do, um, and and I felt like I needed to pray along the river during the pandemic.
Yep.
Yeah, so the pandemic was not hard for me. Um, so I usually ask God for help in everything I do. I mean, it might seem ridiculous to some of the hearers, but I I ask God for direction and He give it to me. So, and it's not just me, I'm not trying. I'm trying to say that I just take these risks and do things. So I called a couple people who I felt would be would volunteer to be part of this launch. So we launched it, and I called a couple people, and they said, "Yeah, I would like to do that." So it was launched on a thing like that. So we launched it, and it turned out to be a pretty amazing event that happened during the pandemic, where we prayed along the river faithfully during the whole pandemic. And you never know what the results of that would be. I mean, there was times when people would just come out the blue and support us and pray with us. And there were some things that happened along that journey where uh, lives changed during that journey. I remember one young lady out the blue just came, and she was out of town, and she came, and we was praying along the river, and she says something led me over here to this river, and we met her, and we was able to pray with her and about her situation, and she decided to get a bus and go back home.
Hmm.
So it was a situation where she had left home, and because of whatever, I don't know, but she was in a bad shape.
Yep.
You know, so it was a lot of things that happened. Then all of a sudden, we decided to go along the river and investigate, and there was other people that had been praying along the river for over 20 years.
Oh, really?
Didn't even know it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We learned about a lot about the some of the things that took place on along the river in both sides of the river many years ago with the Native American Indians,
Mm-hmm.
and we prayed into that. And when I say pray into it, we just ask God for help and wisdom on on even while we're doing this. It seemed like it was pretty ridiculous to do that. It was a commitment to do it, and we decided to be committed to this. And there was a lot of results after that time of praying along the river. A program called Agape School of Ministry started. It was
Yep.
launched. It was launched during the time, a little bit after the time we was praying along the river. And one of the both directors, both of those guys, who was the leaders there, participated along the river, and it was like we didn't invite them, we didn't ask them to come and do that. They just showed up
Mhm.
for that event, and then there was a gentleman who came along the river, and we was launching. We was putting people at different sites around Peoria, overlooking the river, to pray. Which a lot of people don't know this stuff is happening. You know, but I really believe that God is blessing Peoria. He has
Yep.
blessed Peoria in the outlining area of Peoria, and He has a main purpose for our central Illinois area. So yeah, the River Prayer is called River Prayer Network now. Pastor over on the south end of town, she leads that now, and she's
Mhm.
involved in a lot of people's lives on the south side of Peoria. A lot of people that I really respect over in the
Yeah.
south side of Peoria.
Closing things down. Is there anything that's on your heart that you'd like to talk about right now, or any closing comments?
Well, I can't think of anything. I know that. Well, one thing I would like to share is how um, no matter what you go through in life, you mentioned my story,
Mhm.
but my story is God's story.
Yeah.
You know, and I realize that now that I can trust that He's ordering my life. You know,
Mhm.
He's guiding me throughout my lifetime, and I've seen it happen in my own. I mean, to be able to walk today, um, you know, even overcoming uh, addictions, various addictions, many illnesses, close calls, those type of things. That He had a purpose for my life, and I think that if we would all tap into that,
Mhm.
even if you don't know who Jesus is, try to get to know who Jesus is.
Yeah.
And I always go back to First John 1, where it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and and the Word was with God. All things were made by Him, and without Him there was not anything made that was made. In Him was life, and the life was in the light of men and women." So
Mhm.
life, I believe we all want to live. We want to enjoy life, and we may be struggling with some challenges or some past hurt and pain in our lives, a lack of trust in others. Uh, but God is able to take care of all of it. You know, He just asks us to give our lives to Him.
Yep.
If we give our life to Him, He will give us life.
Mhm.
And even just to say everlasting life, everybody wants to live forever. You know, I think when you mention that eternal life, I think it affects everyone.
Yeah.
You know, so everyone desires to have eternal life, even though we may be going through, hell here on earth where we are now. And if you really get into what God says and His promises that He has for us, it would be our direction on how to live. Because He loves us so much, He would help us in any situation. He's done it for me.
Mhm.
I shouldn't be talking on this microphone right now, but I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
And God can change us. He can, instead of depending on a powder or a weed, something that grows out the ground, we could put our trust in Him. Um, and I think that's what if I could encourage someone, and that would be to give your life to Him, because He's wooing you right now. He wants you.
Mm-hmm.
He wants you to give yourself to Him.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Tony. I
Okay.
really, really appreciate. Love you, brother.
You too, man.
Thank you.
Okay.